Before we begin, thank you very much to Grawl Brown for joining the Patreon campaign. I usually expect a weird name out of Grawl, but thank you very much. Thank you very much. Always appreciated. This is day 296 for the shout out streak, which is absolutely insane. You do realize you can't keep this up. I will eventually have to go back to my old intro. You cannot stop it forever, but it's insane that it has made it that far. So thank you very much for that much support. It's been absolutely incredible. All right, so a little bit more of a somber one. We're going to take a more serious approach to today's topic because it is one worth mentioning because it does overall concern Transformers because, it's somewhat concerning for Transformers because Hasbro's had it rough this year. Now, we will be honest here. A good chunk of it was their own fault. But some of it was kind of out of their hands. Sometimes it is just the market itself, and sometimes it is other companies they have to deal with that drop the ball. But either way, it's been a rough year from the toy company from Pawtucket, Rhode Island. And I just want to go over it really quick in hopes that 2024 ends up being something a more optimistic year. Hopefully you can only go up from here, right? So the obvious place for a Transformer channel to start is Rise of the Beasts. So this movie, well, actually seeming like it did well, because it did more than double what the production cost was. The trick to it was it still underperformed, and it's still the lowest grossing movie in the franchise so far. In a franchise that used to rake in well over $1 billion when a new movie came out, it's really sombering and really unfortunate, both for companies and fans alike, when a movie only does $400 million. And you kind of scoff at that. Only $400 million, and it's still considered a box office failure. The movie's budget was almost $200 million. And when they tell you how much a movie makes at the box office, that doesn't account for how much the movie theaters keep. That's just overall gross. This is how much money people spent in order to see this movie. Meaning a huge chunk, millions and millions, comes out of that movie's gross in order to pay the movie theaters for airing the movie in the first place. And the cost of that varies depending on different regions in the world. So it can be a pretty extreme amount. And then you factor in the advertisement cost of a movie, which can also be tens of millions of dollars. And that is not accounted for when they tell you how much the movie actually costs to make. And they never tell you that. They never let you in on like how much the sponsorship deals cost. And Rise of the Beast was heavily marketed. They did a ton of crossover products. They did a ton of advertisement for it. And it still only did about $400 million. It's disappointing because we went through Bumblebee and went, that was actually a really nice movie. And it seemed like the box office was decent for it, considering it was a much lower budget. Maybe they've actually learned. Maybe they've actually learned from Bumblebee and will take its lessons and produce something more akin to that. No, it went right back to the Michael Bay formula that, as it turns out, everyone is still tired of. Because they didn't get nearly what. They didn't even get as much as The Last Night. So keep in mind, typically they will tell you a movie has to double its production cost in order to break even. So when you're dealing with a movie that just did just over double its production cost, yeah, you've got a disappointing movie. Really unfortunate. Now, again, this has more to do with Paramount and the actual producers of the movie, the writers and all that. Just and just not not properly giving us the refresher that the franchise needed. I will say it's a better movie. I'll say right now, it's my number 2 behind Bumblebee and ahead of the original movie. But it's a far cry from the success that they had in their heyday. Maybe the next one. I'm hoping Transformers 1 is a turnaround. I really do. It's not the only one, though. It's not the only one that Hasbro had to deal with. Honor Amongst Thieves, the Dungeons and Dragons movie, also underperformed. And this one was a legitimate bomb. So this one was $150 million to produce. It did $200 million worldwide at the box office. Once you factor in how much the theaters keep, how much crossover advertisement they did, etc., you're looking at something that absolutely lost money for everyone involved. So that's another one. So 2 box office duds from Hasbro within the same year, which is really unfortunate. The thing is, and I'm going to defend this, neither movie is bad. That's the thing. The Rise of the Beast, I think, is a pretty decent live-action Transformer movie. And Honor Among Thieves actually had a lot of people praising it. Even like hardcore D&D fans were like, no, that wasn't bad. That actually wasn't bad. Which, frankly, it wasn't bad is a lot better of a praise than I was expecting for the movie, considering the quality of Dungeons and Dragons movies in the past. So it's a rough time at the box office for Hasbro, and this also put in danger a Dungeons and Dragons TV series they're working out for, I think, Paramount Plus to go to a streaming service. I think that's still on track, so apparently it didn't hurt it too bad. What probably hurt D&D was what Hasbro pulled at the beginning of the year, or more precisely Wizards of the Coast, which is owned by Hasbro. Yeah, that's the whole one D&D open gaming license controversy. So if you've never heard of this story, if you overlooked it or whatnot, Hasbro, or let's put it correctly, Wizards of the Coast had what was called an open gaming license for Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. It allowed people to publish material based on the game for a profit. And they were freely open to do this without like seeking approval from Hasbro, Wizard of the Coast, or anything. So you had tens of thousands of people who found employment writing modules, writing entire guidebooks and source books. You had people creating accessories and things specifically for D&D, like miniatures, dice, etc. Hasbro tried to cut the entire thing and open gaming license 2.0, which will require any of these companies to actually report their earnings to Hasbro, and Hasbro would be entitled to a large cut of it. A cut so large to the point where it would put most of these companies out of business. So, yeah, that backlash was pretty extreme. It wasn't just the fact that Hasbro was trying to gouge people for money that they previously weren't. It was that the open gaming license didn't have any language in it to be terminated. So it was supposed to be an infinite license that they couldn't revoke because this is the kind of chaos that would happen. The chaos happened. This was so extreme that Hasbro eventually had to put out not only did they have to retract 2.0 from ever coming out and ensure that, yeah, like the 1.0 agreement would maintain, but they also had to put the basic rule book of 5th edition into the public domain. So now even that is completely free and clear for anyone to use. That's pretty bad. It's pretty bad when you have to give up your core game basically to just even things out and apologize. So there's still a lot of people burned from that. It wouldn't surprise me if that hurt the D&D movie's performance. Probably hurt the toys performances too, because this year saw a lot of Dungeons and Dragons toys for the first time, and a lot of them ended up on clearance. So yeah, they probably soured themselves there. Not the only brand Wizard of the Coast tried to ruin this year, though. You remember the fiasco that was the 30th edition of Magic the Gathering? So there is a list of cards that Wizard of the Coast promised would never be reprinted because they are so important or valuable to the brand. Things like the infamous Black Lotus. Well, for the 30th anniversary, they reprinted a bunch of those cards. So they lied about that agreement. But also, these cards were sold in packs that cost $250 each, and you were buying bundles of 4. Understand that. That's about 60 cards for $1,000. Because they were special reprints of super rare cards. And keep in mind, they were printed like actual cards, like actual sets of cards. So you're not guaranteed the reprint of the Black Lotus if you pay $1,000 for these packs. On top of that, everything in the set is tournament illegal. So you are asking $250 per pack on these cards. And not only are they tournament illegal, but you don't even know if you're going to get the ones you want out of that set. And it's just so they were basically charging $1,000 for a pack of proxy cards that were essentially useless, which means, and here's the thing with Magic the Gathering, a lot of the collector's value is in how good the cards are, because it is still a player's game. You know, cards aren't valuable like they are in Pokemon just because they're super rare and it's a popular character. It's because it is a meta-destroying card that everyone wants in their deck. And you couldn't do anything with these. So there was another backlash. This is on top of the backlash Magic fans already were giving to Hasbro because they felt they were just producing their material too fast to keep up with. And they were making the hobby way more expensive because they just kept releasing new sets too much. It's a glut in the marketplace. Hasbro's trying to rectify this in 2 ways. Number one, cards are no longer on a 2-year cycle, which means if a set is over 2 years old, it's now tournament illegal. Now it's 3 years. So you don't have to rebuild and rebuy and spend, $1,000 on a full perfect deck of cards to go take to professional tournaments. Every 2 years, they have a little bit more shelf life to them. Also, they just announced that the whole set and draft separate booster thing is going to go away. You're just going to get 1 set of boosters per series now, which I think is, basically going back to what they were before. But trying to paint it up as though they're doing something new and fresh and cool. It's a good move. It's a necessary move. But still, it's Hasbro, it's Wizards of the Coast playing a lot of damage control this year. A lot of damage control. Then we go into some individual failures on Hasbro's part. So if you notice on Hasbro Pulse, they're not pushing selfie series anymore. And if you go digging, they say they are no longer accepting new orders for them. I have seen some questionable reactions to selfie series. And while it is a cool idea to have your head stuck onto the body of the Red Power Ranger or a Ghostbuster suit, that's cool, yes. From what I saw, the quality of the prints were not great. I've saw a lot of people who weren't really happy with how their figure came out. And overall, it felt like a luxury thing that really just, I don't know, it felt like you were paying a lot for a custom head, essentially. And you factor this in with a few other failures they did, like the starting lineup series that they tried to do, I think starting last year, it officially died this year. It turns out when you bake in NFTs to a series that is infamous for being an unpopular toy line, not only, they had to drop the price down by $10 and still no one really went for it. Just failure all the way around. Failure all the way around. So that was 2 big ventures on Hasbro's part that just did not work out for them at all. That's not all that didn't work out. This year, they actually announced that windowed packaging would be returning, and so basically, their experiment into plastic-free packaging was a failure. Now, I've been very cynical about this. I say this every time we talk about this. I've been very cynical about this because it really wasn't an environmental move. It was a cost-cutting maneuver that was disguised as an environmental move. And you could tell that because when it came to the retro lines, the collector-based stuff that they knew they had to market to collectors, retro Spider-Man, reissued Black Series figures, still on the bubble, still on card, in a plastic clamshell bubble. So you're not being very environmental if there are situations where, you're still sticking with the unenvironmental thing for the sake of making more money, because that's the only way collectors are going to buy it. So never impressed. Always felt shady. Never impressed me. And even now, I don't believe it is because of collector backlash that they actually decided to go back to windowed packaging. I believe it's because the retailers are sick of vandalized product. All the missing heads thanks to some TikTok influencer. It's a good move overall. It's great for collectors who actually want their stuff to be protected. But overall, it just kind of makes for a bad look overall. So it didn't go their way. The bad news to this is once we start the next generation of Transformers, I wouldn't expect them to have gotten a price increase, because then they're going to blame, the fact they have to go back to normal packaging. I think we already saw that with the Reactivate figures that are a few bucks more than what you're getting in the box. So whatever follows Legacy, prepare for a markup. I'm just warning you right now. I'm anticipating it. They sold off their eOne branch as well. $500 million worth of assets to Lionsgate. eOne is Hasbro's latest attempt to try and get in on movie and television making themselves. Instead of doing the licensing, let's just do it ourselves. And once again, Hasbro's tried this numerous times in the past, and again, it just did not work out. They are restructuring. They are going to try it again. So at the very least, they have a production company in-house where they kind of dip their fingers in whatever else anyone else is doing with their product. But right now, it just, eOne never worked out for them. They paid a lot of money to get it. I think they're paying less to get out of it. Could be wrong about that. Haven't looked up the exact numbers in a long time. But that seems to be how I remember it. It's just, overall, it's just how business works. You buy a venture, it doesn't work out, you sell the venture. But for the most part, Hasbro just needs to leave it to other people. And then we get into the business side of things. I'm sorry. We have to talk the business side of things because this is bad. Hasbro starts the year by announcing that 1,000 jobs are going to be cut. This was in an effort to get the costs of the entire production of everything down. So that's typical business practices. It seems to be pretty rampant these days. I know the gaming industry lost like 60,000 jobs overall. Something crazy like that this year. So that plays into it too. And then that's how they start the year, which is never a good way of starting off a fiscal year. And then they announced this. So what you're looking at is Hasbro stock price over the last year. You see that huge drop off? Yeah, the huge drop off is when they announce it. We're going to have a pretty bad winter. We're not going to have a good holiday season because this is tough. It's hard. They're not. They call it a. They have like terminology for it to kind of like brush it away. But the reality is they're just having a hard time. It's just a really strong year for video games in general, so toys are having a really hard time competing with kids. It doesn't help that most of the products that Hasbro produces didn't really have any winners this year, Like Marvel didn't really have any big knock it out of the park with kids things that would sell Marvel toys left and right. Spider-Verse maybe, but that might have been it. And then, Transformers, like Earthspark, the show is great, but the toy line doesn't seem to be popular. I mean, for what I see, it's shelf warms all over the place, which is unfortunate. So, this is not really a surprise. It's just kind of how the toy industry struggles in general. But when they announce things like that, all their investors just kind of like hit the eject button. And they went into this year with investors just kind of going like, in the first place. So, financially not great either. So I'm bringing all this up because I'm hopeful for the best. I'm not one of those that's like, oh yeah, good, Hasbro's failing. Ha, shows them for making Transformers bad. Yeah, like they go back to making really solid figures with really high quality plastic and only charging $10 each for them. Then we'll be back into making good money. Idiots. No, it's just a volatile market, and Hasbro doesn't really know how to handle it, apparently. So, again, hoping 2023 is a learning year, and that we'll be back around this time next year, 2024, saying, oh, wow, they actually did pretty good recovering. But for now, we wish them the best, because, I'm sure, I think ever since 2020, we've all known what it's like to have a really bad year. So I'm actually kind of sympathetic to Hasbro. Not Wizards of the Coast, they screw themselves up. But Hasbro was, a lot of this wasn't Hasbro's doing. So that's how it goes. That's how the company holding Transformers has gone this year. So thank you everyone for watching. Hoping for the best. Trying to be optimistic for 2024. Because it's got to go up from here, right? All right. See you next time.
We parlay with the captain.
You would think a werecroc is going to listen to elvish rules of piracy.
Of course it would be the freaking elves that invented parlay.
I had to think of a quick replacement for the French.